Drunk, I pinned my wife to the bed. Her response was a desperate, panicked scream and a call to 911. After the cops mediated, she magnanimously said she didn't blame me. Back then, all I could think about was protecting her, protecting our adopted son. I dedicated my life to it. But when I was old and frail, lying in a hospital bed, I watched my wife and another old man clasp hands, tears in their eyes. The profound love between them seemed to mourn all the years they'd lost. And my own son, the boy I'd cherished for decades, scolded me. You're the one who ruined their lives. That's when I finally saw it. The son I'd adopted bore a striking resemblance to my wife. I died from the shock. When I opened my eyes again, I was looking at the face of my young wife, twisted with disgust. Fueled by the alcohol still buzzing in my veins, I moved toward her. But before I could do anything, she was already spitting venom. I can't believe you're this kind of person. Is that all you men think about? Can't you live without it? You better let me go right now. I've already called the police. Seeing her revulsion, my head still swimming in a fog, I lost my balance and stumbled backward, collapsing onto the sofa. My wife, Dr. Evelyn Reed, her ragged breathing slowly evening out, smoothed her messy hair and tried to compose herself. You shouldn't drink anymore, she said, her voice strained. I didn't answer. The weight of a long, aged life had made me slow. My gaze landed on her face, but I was seeing our son's features superimposed over hers. The resemblance was undeniable. I just never let myself see it before. I'd always told myself it was just one of those things that people who live together for a long time start to look alike. I ignored the fact that he looked nothing like me. Of course, he didn't. He wasn't my son. The piercing wail of a siren cut through the night. Evelyn leaned against the wall, arms crossed, having already resumed that untouchable, goddess on a pedestal air she always wore. A cold smirk touched her lips. Leo, are you aware that even in a marriage, forcing yourself on your partner is a crime? Oh, I was aware. How could I not be? In my last life, this incident became a huge scandal in our circle. Everyone looked at me with the same mix of pity and contempt. I guess they couldn't fathom a man who couldn't even handle his own wife, who almost ended up in jail over it. After the police mediated, Evelyn, who had been performing her role as the outraged victim, told me in a tone dripping with condescension that she could forgive me. I was like a trained dog, waiting for her command. A soft, knowing laugh escaped my lips, the kind of weary tolerance only old age can grant. My voice was flat. I know. So what are you going to do? Press charges? This kind of thing rarely goes anywhere. We had the marriage certificate. Even if I'd beaten her half to death, what would have happened? The world is always more forgiving of men. Not that I ever would. I was too well-mannered for that. My calmness seemed to enrage her. What's that supposed to mean? Is that a threat? She snapped. You're the one who can't live without me. You're the one who begged to be with me. I just can't accept this kind of behavior. If you can't handle it, then let's just get a divorce. Before I could answer, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Evelyn shot me a glacial look and went to open it. 2 police officers stepped inside, their eyes taking in the disheveled living room. Seeing that we weren't actively fighting, one of them asked, "Who called 911? I did, Evelyn said, glancing back at me before giving them a brief, edited version of the events. One of the officers walked over to me, his voice stern. You look like a decent guy. What are you doing, pulling something like this? What's your relationship to her? I pointed a finger at my chest, then gestured to the large wedding photo hanging on the wall. I'm her husband. The officer's words caught in his throat. He looked helplessly at his partner. I then pointed to the framed family photo on the coffee table. And that's my son. He's 8. In my last life, I was blackout drunk. I only sobered up at the police station, drowning in guilt as Evelyn interrogated me. I couldn't defend myself, so I just let her dictate the outcome. But now, hearing me speak, Evelyn's anger flared. That doesn't give you the right to force me. The cop scratched his head, ready to play peacemaker. Domestic disputes are always messy. A he said, she said, nightmare nobody wants to untangle. I chuckled dryly. We were just fighting. She's got a temper. Sorry to waste your time. Officers were really fine. They still hesitated, turning to Evelyn. Ma'am, would you feel safer coming with us to the station? It was a genuine offer of protection, a way out in case she was afraid of what I'd do after they left. But Evelyn's face darkened. I'm not the one who did something wrong. If you're taking anyone, it should be him. Evelyn was brilliant, no doubt, but her genius was confined to academia. When it came to real-world social cues, she was as naive as a college freshman. With no real crime committed, they left after giving me a stern lecture. As they walked out, they reminded Evelyn that she could call again if she felt unsafe, that they could help her find a place to stay for the night. She didn't take them up on it. Once the apartment was quiet again, I broke the silence. You said you wanted a divorce, right? I agree. Evelyn's head snapped toward me. In my previous life, divorce never crossed my mind. Her physical issues weren't a deal breaker for me. I was willing to spend my entire life by her side, believing I could eventually melt the ice around her heart with my warmth. I gave everything for her, for our adopted son. But what did I get for a lifetime of devotion? Lying on my deathbed, I got the news that she had reunited with her first love. Two seniors, teeth nearly gone, holding hands in front of me, their tear-filled eyes speaking of a love story I had interrupted. And my son, the son I raised, accused me of ruining their lives. It was enough to kill me on the spot. My death was quiet, my life history intentionally buried. The public only remembered that Dr. Evelyn Reed, the renowned economist, had reunited with her long-lost love after being widowed. The star-crossed lovers, separated for 60 years, finally found their happily ever after. The world cheered for them. And me? The man who spent his life beside her? I was a footnote in their love story, a nameless extra. The few times I was mentioned, it was only to say that I was the obstacle that had kept them apart for so long. After hearing me agree to the divorce, Evelyn said the exact same thing she'd said in our last life. Leo, why can't you believe me? Whether we do that or not, it doesn't change how I feel about you. Yeah, right? Tell me another one. My lack of reaction clearly troubled her. Leo, divorce isn't a game. We shouldn't make decisions when we're angry. She turned and walked away, giving me the silent treatment. She assumed, like always, that I'd eventually come around. At 4:30 a.m., my alarm went off. I smirked, shut it off, deleted it, and pulled the covers back over my head. Dad, I want your famous bolognese. You haven't even started the sauce yet. I'm going to be late. Caleb knocked on my door. His intelligence was all Evelyn, but his personality, the obsessive-compulsive tendencies, the germophobia, was a perfect 10. Since he was little, he'd insisted on only eating meals I prepared myself. Ask your mother, I mumbled, pulling the blanket tighter. He froze, standing there for a moment before slamming the door shut. After sleeping in, I felt fantastic. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Chloe Lynn, I heard you're back in the States. Starting a new venture and dating some celebrity? Some guy named Julian something. The first thing I did after being reborn was Google Julian Vance. As an A-list heartthrob, his information was everywhere. The entertainment blogs said he was about to star in a huge blockbuster, backed by a mysterious, deep-pocketed investor. He was a pay-to-play, and I remembered something else. Just before I died, I'd overheard the nurses gossiping. Julian Vance had married an overseas heiress, Chloe Lynn. She had passed away 3 years prior from an illness, and they had no children. That made things simple. No one knew that when I was 12, I was fostered by the Lynn family for a year. I was, briefly, Chloe Lynn's older brother. She confessed her feelings for me back then, but I fell for Evelyn. To avoid any messy entanglements, I cut off all contact with the Lynns. Who could have guessed that by doing so, we would both end up as the forgotten first spouses of Evelyn Reed and Julian Vance, destined to die early. When I met Chloe, I got straight to the point. I'm getting a divorce. If things get ugly, it could destroy your boyfriend's public image. You might want to reconsider bankrolling his career. After that, I dropped all my domestic duties and focused on painting in my friend Mark's gallery. I had a lifetime of pin-up frustration to release, and I poured all of it onto the canvas. Evelyn found me there. I was holding a palette, brush in hand, splattered with so many colors I looked like a construction worker covered in grime. Her brow furrowed in disgust at the sight. When it was clear I wasn't coming out, she hesitantly stepped inside. Leo, you know Chloe Lynn? Did her decision to pull funding from the movie Shattered City have anything to do with you? Chloe, ever the businesswoman, worked fast. No hesitation. I kept painting. Since when does a distinguished professor like you follow Hollywood gossip? Evelyn was quiet for a moment before choosing her words carefully. The lead actor's agent contacted me. This film is very important for their career. I didn't buy it for a second. What is Julian Vance to you? She flinched, adjusting her glasses. Leo, I don't know him. It's just, Evelyn, what do you think of this painting? I suddenly put down my brush and stepped aside. On the massive canvas, a fiery sunset bathed a vast, empty mountain range in red. A simple man, carrying 2 heavy baskets, walked along a crimson path. Leo, you know I don't understand art. About Shattered City, my fingers traced the outline of the baskets. Do you know what he's carrying? I asked, my voice low. It's charcoal. I turned to face her, a cold smile on my face. The sun is about to set, and the stones under his feet will grow cold. But if he's carrying charcoal, he can use the last rays of sunlight to set the path ahead on fire, to keep it burning long into the night. Leo, that doesn't make sense. Charcoal isn't that heavy, and sunlight can't ignite it. The physics are all wrong. Exactly. It's a lie told to an honest man. The sun will always set. The road ahead will always be dark. The foolish man in the painting was me from my last life. Chasing Evelyn as if she were the sun, carrying Caleb in my baskets like he was my last ember of hope. On and on, deceived by a lie, carrying a burden that wasn't mine. I stared at the painting, then suddenly grabbed a bucket of black paint from the floor and hurled it at the canvas. Paint exploded everywhere. The piece I'd spent 3 days on was now just a thick, black shroud, a funeral for the stupid, stubborn man I used to be. Lies, I roared, breathing heavily as I glared at her. None of it was real. Just like you could never love me. I took a deep breath. So please, Dr. Reed, grant me the divorce. Don't settle. Leo Russo has other options. Evelyn's expression froze, a flicker of fear mixing with her shock. Other options? She asked, her voice trembling. You mean? Chloe Lynn. In that moment, she finally seemed to understand. My decision to leave was real. 2 days later, Julian Vance and his agent showed up at my front door. The moment he stepped inside, he tilted his chin up, surveying the apartment like a king inspecting his domain. Young Julian Vance was handsome, no question, but that condescending air, that way of looking at people like they were ants, was identical to the old man he would become. Clearly, life had been very good to him. Evelyn played the gracious host, offering them seats and making introductions. The proud, brilliant professor, usually so above it all, was now willingly playing the part of a sycophantic go-between for the man she loved. Mr. Russo, what's your relationship with Chloe? Julian asked, sinking into an armchair with an affected casualness, asking for a favor and still putting on airs. We were almost a thing, I said slowly, studying him. To her, I guess you could say I was her first love, the one that got away. His expression flickered. Evelyn, holding a teapot, paused midair and shot me a sharp look. Leo, you never mentioned that before. A good ex is supposed to act like they're dead, right? I've done a pretty good job of that all these years, haven't I, Evelyn? The room went silent. The agent let out a soft hiss, as if he'd just bitten into a lemon. Then why are you contacting her now? Why are you coming after me? Julian demanded, throwing the trendy baseball cap he was wearing onto the coffee table. The metal chains on it clattered loudly against the glass. He was really making himself at home. I shot a meaningful glance at Evelyn. I heard she was seeing someone, I said deliberately. I wanted to see if she still had feelings for me. If she does, well, that could get complicated. This is unbelievable. Leo, have you forgotten you're married? You have an 8-year-old son. Julian shot to his feet, pointing a long, manicured finger at me. I stood up and slapped his hand away. So what if I'm married? Does being married mean you can't think about your first love? I don't just think about her. I could probably get her to stay celibate for me. You mad? Go on, hit me. Julian finally seemed to realize something was wrong. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes, and he instinctively glanced at Evelyn. They shared a look of bewildered suspicion before quickly looking away. The agent was completely lost. Mr. Russo, how can you say things like that? Your wife and son are right here. Sometime during our standoff, Caleb had come downstairs. He'd been standing there, listening for who knows how long. His eyes were wide with disbelief. Dad, is it true? Have you been ignoring me because you're thinking about some other woman? His voice trembled. Are you really going to leave me? Julian, furious, shot Evelyn a venomous glare. She rushed to Caleb's side. Caleb, sweetie, your dad is just angry with me. It's okay. Go back upstairs, we'll handle this. Caleb ignored her, his eyes fixed on me, waiting for my answer. I pretended not to notice him and casually sat back down. Sweetie, how ironic. They probably picked a name that sounded like his, so she could say it out loud without raising suspicion. Once Caleb was back upstairs, Evelyn turned to me, her brow furrowed. Leo, adult problems shouldn't involve children. This is not healthy for him. What a joke. She had the nerve to say that to me, as if her adult problems hadn't defined my entire life. Was I, a man in my prime, supposed to pay the price for their moment of passion, for their forbidden fruit, and spend my life as the cuckolded husband with a title but no rights? Julian stormed towards the door, throwing one last insult over his shoulder. Your husband has no class. He's a shallow, petty man. I refuse to believe Chloe would actually pull her investment over him. We'll see about that. I smiled sweetly at his back. I'm sure you're right, Mr. Vance. After all, everyone has a first love. If Chloe doesn't work out, I'm sure you'll find another sucker. At that, Julian stumbled over the threshold, practically fleeing the apartment. I watched him go arms crossed. Too bad for him. His other sucker, Evelyn, was still just a professor trying to make tenure. Her reputation as a young, attractive academic outweighed her actual accomplishment for now. She wasn't in a position to help him. If she had been, they never would have broken up all those years ago. Leo, Chloe's investment in Shattered City is a business decision. It's profitable for her. You don't have to do this, Evelyn sighed. Every word was a defense of Julian. I gave a faint smile. Professor, instead of criticizing me, maybe you should be networking with Wall Street titans to help Mr. Vance get his funding. Behind her glasses, her pupils contracted. She opened her mouth as if to ask me something, but then just lowered her eyes, sighed, and walked away. I watched her go with a sneer. I'd orchestrated today's drama partly to vent my own anger, but it was also a test. If Evelyn felt any guilt, any remorse, she would have agreed to the divorce and offered me a generous settlement. That would have shown she had some shred of conscience left. But no, what a disappointment. She continued to play dumb, to evade, determined to keep me as her fool, to bleed me dry. Why make it so complicated? My friend Mark said, poking me in the forehead. Just tell her you know Caleb is their son. She cares about her reputation. She wouldn't be able to refuse a divorce then. He didn't get my caution. He didn't know Evelyn. In our last life, she and Julian had gone to incredible lengths to hide Caleb's parentage for decades without a single leak. Why would she suddenly risk her entire career and spotless reputation over a single accusation from me? Even if she didn't care about herself, she would protect Julian. He was 27, at a critical point where he needed to transition from teen heartthrob to serious actor. This blockbuster was his make-or-break moment. And with the Chloe Lynn rumors swirling, the last thing he needed was a scandal. Evelyn, who loved him so much, would never let that happen. After getting a lock of Julian's hair from Chloe, I had biological samples for all three of them. I immediately sent them off for a DNA test. On my way back, Evelyn called and asked me to come home early. She said she was ready to talk about the divorce. I should have known it was a trap. After 3 glasses of red wine, I started to feel strange. A flush of heat, a foreign, insistent desire coiling in my gut. Evelyn came over, her touch supposedly supportive. She was wearing a white silk blouse I'd picked out for her. The top 3 buttons were undone, and as she leaned over me, the view was intoxicating. My throat went dry. I couldn't look away. It wasn't until she guided me to the bed and her trembling hands started unbuttoning my shirt that clarity struck me like a bolt of lightning. Evelyn, did you drug me? Her body went rigid. Get out, I roared, pointing at the door. The sickness in my body fueled my rage. She stood there, wringing her hands, whispering placating words. Leo, no, you just had a little too much to drink. I've been thinking, we can make this work. Whatever you want, I'll cooperate. I slapped her hard. The sound cracked in the silent room. Evelyn, do I look that stupid to you? You think I can't tell the difference between wine and whatever the hell you put in it? The truth was, without this second chance, I wouldn't have known. I would have thought my prayers had finally been answered. I would have been so grateful for her sacrifice that I never would have suspected the wine. Who are you putting on this show for? I spat, pointing a finger at her face. This brave martyr act? Let me tell you something. I've seen you when you're old and gray, your hair thin and greasy. I know what you look like with wrinkled, liver-spotted skin and breasts that sag to your belly. You think a little cheap drug is going to make me want that? You got to be kidding me. The fire in my veins made me reckless, my words a torrent of poison. After my tirade, I shoved her aside, shock and humiliation warring on her face, and stumbled out of the apartment. Rain started to fall. I ran, the cold wind stinging my cheeks. I ran until I couldn't breathe, then stopped, bent over with my hands on my knees, and started to laugh. You were right, Leo, I thought. You were absolutely right. Strip away the filter of love, and the Evelyn of the future was exactly as ugly and pathetic as I described. So much for the brilliant, untouchable goddess. After half an hour in the rain, I realized I was running a fever. I called Chloe. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with a in my arm. Leo, what the hell is going on with you two? Chloe demanded, shoving her phone in my face. It was open to her message thread with Julian Vance. Chloe, Leo is just throwing a tantrum with his wife and using you to feel important. He's an artist. What does he know about movies? If you really cared about our old friendship, you wouldn't be enabling this nonsense. Everyone in New York knows he's still crazy about Evelyn. I scrolled up. There was a video about a minute long. It was from our home security camera. Me and Evelyn having a candlelit dinner, gazing into each other's eyes. Then me, leaning on her as she helped me into the bedroom. I gave a cold laugh and handed the phone back to Chloe. Then I called for a doctor and explained what had happened. Idiot, Chloe hissed after the doctor left, her hands on her hips. Leo, they can forget about that money. This is beyond insulting. Do they really think you have no one in your corner? I fought back the tears. No, I'm going to make them lose, and they're going to know exactly why. Chloe looked at me, confused. Mark was already on his way, bringing the pitch deck for the animated film we'd been working on day and night. Evelyn had a point. Chloe's investment in Julian was a business move. I couldn't just rely on a fragile childhood crush to win her over. This time around, I was getting a divorce, but I was also getting my career back. In my last life, because of Evelyn's obsessive cleanliness, I gave up the art I'd spent 20 years mastering to become a full-time, stay-at-home dad. Mark had invited me to be the art director on his indie animated film back then. I turned it down, worried about Caleb's packed schedule of tutoring and extracurriculars, and his inability to get along with any nanny we hired. Now, I wasn't just going to be the art director. I was going to be the producer. And Chloe's investment? With or without Julian Vance in the picture, I was going to get it. At the industry mixer the next day, Evelyn and a few influential people she brought along were trying to persuade Chloe to reinvest in Shattered City. The film's director was there, too. I'm sorry, Mr. Joe, Chloe said coolly. I've already decided to invest that capital in Director Chen's film, The Ember Cycle. Director who? People murmured, looking around. Mark and I made our entrance, smiling. After a brief introduction, pitch books were passed around. As people flipped through them, a few influential faces lit up with genuine interest. Of course they were interested. Mark's film was a sleeper hit in my last life. With my foreknowledge, any savvy investor could see it was a winning bet. Suddenly, no one was talking about Julian Vance anymore. He wasn't used to being ignored, and his eyes started to turn red with frustration. Leo, that's enough, Evelyn said, her brow furrowed, choosing to reprimand me in front of everyone. This has gone too far. You've dragged all these people into your little drama. You're going to lose control of this. She then turned to Chloe, her expression serious. Ms. Lynn, as Julian's girlfriend, you should know how important Shattered City is to him. I promise I will handle my personal matters with Leo, and he won't bother you again. I didn't say a word. Mark rolled his eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Evelyn, you've only been married 6 years. Have you really forgotten what a brilliant artist he is? Chloe's face hardened. She was even more direct. Leo isn't playing games. You, on the other hand, should probably go back to your ivory tower. You don't understand this business. She then pointed at Julian. And for the record, Mr. Vance and I are business associates, nothing more. Professor Reed, you should be very clear on your position before you speak. Julian's forced smile finally crumbled. He slammed his champagne flute down and stormed out of the event. In a single night, he lost his big break and his wealthy backer. And I hadn't even played my trump card yet. Evelyn, whether from humiliation or concern for Julian, hesitated for a moment before rushing out after him. The other guests shot me looks of pity. I just smiled. It didn't bother me at all. The day the DNA test results came in, Evelyn came home drunk. The esteemed professor who hated schmoozing and the vulgarities of the business world had debased herself for the man she loved. For me, though, she had maintained a lifetime of cold, proud distance. I stared at the words on the report. 99% probability of biological parentage. My heart still seized with a familiar pain. I knew it wasn't because I still had feelings for Evelyn. It was the crushing realization that my entire life, my sacrifices, had truly been for nothing. The truth was just a few words on a page, but for me, it represented over 40 years. All those agonizing days and nights, all the relentless hope and delusion, still gnawed at my soul. Even as I opened the envelope, a small part of me had prayed that maybe Caleb was only Julian's son, but the resemblance I'd seen to Evelyn was just my old, failing eyes playing tricks on me. Now, that last illusion was shattered. Evelyn Reed had never loved me, not one bit. In all those years, she never felt a single flicker of genuine desire for me. If she had simply been asexual, I could have accepted it. But she wasn't. She was unequivocally Caleb's mother. That knowledge trampled what little was left of my male pride into the mud. A wave of hatred washed over me, and I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Evelyn, I said suddenly, my voice cutting through the darkness of the dining room. I've made a decision. I don't just want a divorce. I'm going to make sure you three get your happy ending. She stared at me in shock as I flipped on the light. Why should I be the one to stitch your broken, dirty little world back together? This is the reality your family of three should have been facing all along, I said numbly. Evelyn's face went white, the drunken haze in her eyes instantly replaced by sharp clarity. She walked closer, her trembling hands reaching for the report. After a long moment, her arms fell to her sides. "Leo," she whispered, her voice hoarse, "you know?" "Yes, I know." We stood in silence for a full minute. Then she fell to her knees in front of me, sobbing as she recounted the story of her and Julian. She was a poor college student. He was from a wealthy family that disapproved of her. The night they broke up, they got drunk and slept together. Inexperienced, she didn't realize she was pregnant until 3 months later. She had to drop out of school to have Caleb. "Leo, I'm so sorry," she cried, clutching my hand. "My feelings for him were just about regret, about the baby. It wasn't love. You have to believe me. As for intimacy, it's not what you think. It wasn't about saving myself for him." Seeing my disbelief, she got up, pulled me into her study, and took out a file. It was a thick psychological evaluation. After that night, I started seeing a therapist. I could never get over it. I hated myself for losing control. "Leo, just give me some time." Her eyes were filled with a desperate, pained conflict. "If Caleb is the problem, I'll send him away. You'll never have to see him again. Leo, please, can we not get a divorce? This condition I have, it's temporary." I didn't believe a single word. Evelyn's greatest talent wasn't in finance. It was in manipulation. She was a grandmaster. In my last life, as simple whether we have sex or not doesn't change my love for you was enough to keep me celibate and loyal for a lifetime. Now, a heartfelt my feelings for him were just about regret was meant to win my sympathy. The world doesn't work like that. I coldly pulled my hand from her grasp. "Professor, I'm giving you 3 days to finalize the divorce. If you don't, I release this DNA report to the press." For the next 3 days, I buried myself in work, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Mark told me Evelyn was camped outside the studio every day, even waiting by my car in the parking garage, desperate to see me. On the last day, she brought Caleb with her. He begged me to stay, calling out for his dad until his voice was raw. I remained unmoved, my heart of stone. Even Mark was getting misty-eyed. He adored Caleb. For the past 6 years, Caleb had called him Uncle Mark. He couldn't bear to see the boy so heartbroken. Yet I, the man who had been called Dad every day for 6 years, could be so ruthless. "Now I know you're serious," Mark said, shaking his head. "About the divorce, about your career. You're really doing this." I took a sip of my cold coffee. The bitterness filled my mouth. Mark didn't understand. When I was old and sick, when all my hopes rested on my son's shoulders, that ungrateful boy had looked at me with cold pity and said, "Mom and Julian are old now. They just want to spend their last years with the person they love. Can't you just let them have that one last wish? After all, you're the one who kept them apart for a lifetime." No one knew the depth of my despair in that moment. Anyone else in the world could misunderstand me, blame me, hate me, and I wouldn't have cared. But Caleb was the one person I could never forgive. He was the one who, at the very end of my life, had ensured I died completely and utterly alone. A pathetic, forgotten old man. When the time was up, I went to the courthouse as planned. Evelyn was there, looking pale and thin. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her lips were chapped. She looked like she'd been sick for weeks, as if a strong gust of wind could knock her over. "Leo, does it really have to end like this?" I stared into the distance, my lips pressed into a thin line. She seemed to want to say more, but in the end, all she said was, "You're right to cut your losses. I can't promise I'll ever get over my issues. I shouldn't have dragged you down with me." The clerk asked her, "Are you sure you want to do this?" A flicker of regret crossed her eyes before she nodded silently. The final stamp fell, severing the toxic bond between us. Whether she was truly reluctant to divorce me or just terrified of the truth about Caleb coming out, I no longer cared to find out. As we walked out of the courthouse, Chloe Lynn's sports car was parked across the street. Before we parted ways, Evelyn said one last thing to me. She said Julian Vance was a youthful mistake, a closed chapter. She promised she would raise Caleb on her own from now on and would have no further contact with him. The sincerity and determination in her eyes made her look like a completely different person from the 80-year-old woman I remembered. 6 months later, our movie was released to critical and commercial acclaim. At the wrap party, Chloe threw her arms around me, ecstatic. "Leo, welcome back. This is the real you. I knew you could do it." I was giddy, dizzy with success. "You're the one who's laughing all the way to the bank." I teased her back. Mark joked that since her investment had paid off so handsomely, it was probably time for her to head back to Australia. For the last 6 months, she'd been a constant presence at the studio, even moving her own office into our building. Our staff all joked they'd never seen a more hands-on investor, whispering that maybe the Lynn family had gone broke and she was betting everything on this one project. When she overheard them, she'd just laugh and say she couldn't go home until she'd landed a boyfriend. But in all that time, surrounded by the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry, there wasn't a single rumor about her dating anyone. Eventually, everyone figured it out. I was her target. At first, I brushed it off. Then I found it hard to believe. I never imagined that a simple, handwritten confession from our teenage years could transform into such a passionate, relentless pursuit more than a decade later. When Mark asked me privately if I would ever consider being with her, my instinctive response was, "Does someone actually love me?" He stared at me for a second, then burst out laughing and playfully punched my chest. "Dude, you're a multi-millionaire producer now. Are you kidding me?" It hit me then. Oh, right. I was 27 again. I could still dream of love, still believe that relentless devotion could be rewarded. I wasn't the old man from my last life, a man who had spent 40 years in an emotional desert, convinced he was unlovable, who had toiled his whole life away for nothing. So, I told Chloe that it might take a very long time for me to believe she loved me. She just smiled and said, "That's okay. I'll wait." This is weird. Evelyn is actually marrying Julian Vance. That doesn't track with how she's been acting at all. One day, Mark burst into my office waving a wedding invitation. Something's not right. She spent months trying to win you back. Why would she do something so self-destructive? I glanced at the invitation, and my eyes were immediately drawn to the bride's signature, handwritten on the card. I shot to my feet. A wild, impossible thought ignited in my mind. Evelyn came back, too. Only I would know that this specific, stylized signature was one she'd had a calligrapher design for her 50th birthday. She'd use it all the way until she was 80. On the day of the wedding, I wore a mask and snuck into the reception. After the new lead actor for Shattered City was announced, Julian Vance had made a big, splashy declaration that he was retiring from acting. His fans boasted that he was going back to run his family's empire, that Hollywood was beneath him. It was, at least, a graceful exit. In reality, his family's company was failing. Julian soon found himself on the elite matchmaking circuit, but the candidates his father found were, to his taste, subpar. The tabloids frequently caught him storming out of disastrous dates. It wasn't long before he went crawling back to Evelyn. By now, Evelyn was a distinguished professor at a prestigious university with a string of academic achievements to her name. The Ice Queen, as she was known, was a hot commodity on the post-divorce dating scene. Yet, for some reason, she and Julian never seemed to make any progress. Whenever asked about her love life, she would state flatly that she had no intention of remarrying. During the reception, as the newlyweds made their rounds, I saw Evelyn turn and instinctively reach for a cane that wasn't there. I knew I was right. When you've just been reborn, some habits etched into your very bones are hard to shake. Our eyes met across the room. We recognized each other instantly. She intercepted me later in the hotel parking lot. "Regardless of everything, Leo," she said, "thank you for letting me go." Her eyes were calm, as deep and still as a well. This was definitely not the same Evelyn from our divorce, the one still clinging to some desperate hope. I managed a faint, breezy smile. "Don't mention it. We should have done it years ago." She nodded, a hint of wistfulness in her voice. "Seeing you so successful. I'm happy for you." "Thanks," I said. An awkward silence fell between us. It felt familiar. This was how we had existed for the last decade of our previous life. Just as we were about to part, she spoke again. "I don't know why my younger self rejected Julian. Marrying my first love. That was my biggest regret. I should have been thrilled." Her voice was laced with confusion. "She kept your art studio exactly as you left it. All your things are still at the house. Caleb told me he accidentally damaged one of your paintings, and she completely lost it on him." The old Evelyn looked truly lost. "Leo, I had an episode when I was 55. My doctor said I lost significant parts of my memory. I wonder if it's related to this." "You were sick?" I asked, surprised. She nodded thoughtfully. "All right. I always kept my therapy sessions a secret from you." So, the new signature wasn't a style choice. It was because of amnesia. Chloe, wondering where I'd gone, came looking for me and came face to face with Evelyn. "Professor Reed, congratulations on the wedding," she said, linking her arm through mine, her tone dripping with insincere cheerfulness. Evelyn didn't react, just nodded and turned to leave. I watched her walk away until she disappeared from view. Chloe, sensing my distraction, tugged my arm, a jealous pout on her lips. "What's so interesting about that old academic? She looks like she's aging in reverse, all stiff and lifeless." "I'm serious," she said, puffing out her cheeks. "Don't be fooled by how pretty she is now. A person like that, she'll probably be bald by 40. Once middle age hits, she'll be twice as miserable as anyone else." Her words made me laugh until my sides hurt, and a new thought occurred to me. So the old Evelyn really did have dementia? Evelyn got her wish. A year later, I went with Chloe to Australia to meet her parents. You're so heartless. Mrs. Lynn cried, hugging me tightly. To just cut us off like that. Even if you got married, we're still your family. Back on her home turf, with her family as backup, Chloe dropped the gentle, pursuing persona she'd maintained in the States. Yeah, well, he was smart enough to call me for help this time, she said haughtily, crossing her arms. Otherwise, I would have ignored him completely. I have my pride, you know. Mrs. Lynn just laughed. Don't listen to her. She went back to check on you, to see how you were doing. And what if I've been doing well? I asked quietly. Chloe's face darkened, and she gritted her teeth. I know you wanted nothing to do with me. If you had been happy, I would have made sure I never crossed your path again. I wouldn't have bothered you. I just looked at her, my eyes welling up until the world blurred. She immediately panicked, rushing over to comfort me. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a mean thing to say. I shouldn't have said it. I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling like the biggest blind fool in the world. All for a bit of stupid, misplaced pride. I had overlooked this incredible woman. In my last life, she must have come to see me, too. She must have seen me obsessed with Evelyn, pouring my entire being into my family and my son, abandoning my art and my future, and thinking I was happy. So she quietly went back to Australia. She respected my choices. She didn't interfere. After Chloe and I made things official, I returned to the States. Mark was in pre-production for a new film, and I needed to be there. After a long meeting, we grabbed coffee. He told me that in the months I'd been in Australia, Evelyn and Julian's marriage had been a complete train wreck. You know how high-maintenance Caleb is, he said with schadenfreude, and Julian is a spoiled brat who can't even do his own laundry. I could picture it perfectly. Caleb, with his obsessive cleanliness and hatred of strangers in the house. Julian, arrogant, lazy, and allergic to housework. And Evelyn, absorbed in her research, expecting to be waited on hand and foot. What disaster. Mark was practically crying with laughter. You won't believe it, but now everyone at the university knows Evelyn has issues in the bedroom. Julian is apparently going insane, married, but getting nothing. He's not even trying to be discreet about it. The great Dr. Rita's been knocked right off her pedestal. It's hilarious. I listened, a faint smile playing on my lips. Mark added that during one of their fights, Evelyn had sighed and told Julian he'd never measure up to me. When Julian protested, she calmly and methodically listed all my good qualities, enraging him so much that he didn't come home for 2 weeks. Now, the running bet on campus was how long until they filed for divorce. Meanwhile, a certain woman, bogged down with business in Australia, heard the rumor about Evelyn's condition and shrieked with delight, immediately calling me to confirm. I, of course, ignored her. After our new movie wrapped, Julian Vance found me. He looked haggard, a shadow of his former glamorous self. He sat down and slid a divorce certificate across the table toward me. Leo, you did this on purpose, didn't you? He accused. You spoiled them, made them impossible to live with. This was your revenge, wasn't it? I stir my coffee slowly. I took care of your son for 6 years, and this is the thanks I get. He was speechless for a moment. You were so devoted. You should have just stayed with them. Why did you have to come and mess up my life? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. Do you love Evelyn? I asked. I love Chloe, he snapped. Evelyn and I were never meant to be. We can't stand each other. I understood then. For both of them, love was just a calculation, a choice based on convenience. They were both selfish, loving only themselves. If they had truly been in love, how could they have gone half a century without a word, content in their separate lives? And if they weren't in love, how did they manage to coincidentally reunite the moment their respective spouses were dead, acting like passionate lovers desperate to spend their final years together? Now I finally got it. They hadn't contacted each other for decades because they each had someone else carrying their burdens for them. They weren't willing to give up that convenience. Their grand reunion was just a cure for loneliness, a partnership of last resort. For the old Evelyn, being reborn meant she got to marry her first love while she was still young. But in the end, the person she couldn't forget, the one who haunted her, was me, the ex-husband she had betrayed. Evelyn collapsed. She was in the hospital and insisted on seeing me. Leo, she rasped, struggling to open her eyes. I'm leaving. She reached a trembling hand toward me. I sat by her bed, watching her silently. I remember. Didn't I promise you once? That besides, that one thing. I would give you a husband's greatest honor, that you would be the only one, that I would never betray you. Yes, I said, not looking away. You said that. Her eyes filled with a deep sadness. But I forgot, and I got married again. So this must be my punishment. I didn't reply. She slowly closed her eyes, succumbing to the fever. I knew, in that moment, that the old Evelyn was gone. She couldn't merge with her younger self. Her life had been one of unbroken success, both personal and professional, with only one lingering regret: Julian. But when she returned to her youth and fixed that one flaw, she discovered that the mended version was far uglier and more unbearable than the original regret. She couldn't accept it. Or perhaps she couldn't face me again. For whatever reason, I no longer cared. The Evelyn who woke up next looked at me like a lost child, her eyes red-rimmed. When she finally processed who I was, she grabbed my hand desperately. "Leo, I'm not her. I love you. I never wanted to betray you," she babbled. "You were too good to that old woman. You spoiled her. She never had to suffer the pain of losing you. But I have. I know now that I love you. Give me one more chance. I'll change, I swear." I gently pulled my hand away and shook my head. "Evelyn, this is who you are. You can't change. Your personality makes it impossible for you to recognize and hold onto something good. You see other people's love as a weakness. That's why, when her life was going well, she looked down on me, treated me with indifference, acting like my untouchable god. But the moment I actually leave, you panic. So she abused me, and now she groveled. Did she really win in our last life? Now I knew the answer. No, she didn't spend her best years with the person she supposedly loved. She could have had a passionate, vibrant life with me, but she threw it away. We wasted a lifetime tormenting each other. I finally felt a sense of peace. Because a person like Evelyn would waste her life no matter who she married. She could be reborn 100 times and would still be destined to watch happiness slip through her fingers. As for me, my conscience was clear. I still had a bright and brilliant future ahead of me. To the old man I used to be, Leo Russo, I am ready to make peace with you. And now it's time to say goodbye. Stepping out of the hospital, I took out my phone and dialed. "Chloe," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "I miss you. I couldn't wait to start my new life."